Hey guys, welcome back. So for today's video, I'm going to go ahead and do part 2 to my Getting into Vet School question and answer series. I opened up my Instagram and asked people to ask me any questions they have about the vet school interview process because I know interview season is here. Whether you've already taken your interview or you're waiting on interviews, at least for Tuskegee, I know our interviews are later this month. So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and try to let you know what to expect with your interviews and how to prepare yourself. So if this is something you're interested in, please continue watching. And I'm gonna go ahead and link the part 1 to the question and answer series down below if you haven't seen that and you wanna check it out. All right, so my first question is, how many schools did I apply to for vet school? So I applied to 3 schools. I applied to Tuskegee University, of course, the University of Florida, and Lincoln Memorial, which is in Tennessee. And in my previous video, I've spoken about this, but I took a very reserved approach when applying to vet school. For some reason, I had this notion that I wasn't going to get in on my first try, just because I know statistically, a lot of people have to apply multiple times, and that's perfectly fine. It's a very competitive field that we're in, and I was just preparing myself for that. I knew my GPA wasn't where it needed to be, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money applying to these schools and then end up not getting in. So I took a very reserved approach and just applied to a select few. But now I would say that's one of my bigger regrets, because I wish I had kind of stepped out and applied to a bunch of others. I did end up getting in, and it's like I kind of limited myself because I didn't believe in myself, and there's no reason to do that. So I would recommend applying to as many schools that you can afford to apply to, of course, but it's always nice to have options and stuff, so it can't hurt you to apply to more. Okay, so my second question is, how many schools invited me to interviews? So I got invited to 2 interviews at the University of Florida and at Tuskegee. Lincoln Memorial was a weird situation because they wrote me back and said that my application was never completed, so it was just never taken into consideration. But I found that kind of weird because I applied through the VEMCAS, and if you guys have already applied, you know that it's just one general application and it sends out to all the schools you pick. So I don't understand how 2 of the schools got my application but 1 didn't. So I don't know if there was an issue with the supplemental application, and I honestly can't even remember if there was a supplemental application for Lincoln Memorial, which basically is an application outside of the VEMCAS that you have to fill out and send out. So either I just forgot to fill out the supplemental application, or it got lost in the mail or something. I don't know. But so I don't even count that school because it didn't end up completing my application through it. But I did get my interviews at University of Florida and Tuskegee. So the next question was, what was my undergrad GPA? So my GPA was a 3.23. And for vet school, in general, they recommend a 3.6 GPA. So I am way nowhere near a 3.6. But for that reason, I knew my GPA wasn't that competitive, so I worked my butt off my entire life, since high school. In high school, that wasn't a concern for me. My GPA in high school was very high, but I just wanted hands-on experience, so I started working early. When it got to undergrad, I knew that I had to make up for what I lacked academically in my experience. So I made sure to be extremely well-rounded. I had jobs and volunteer experience with large animal, equine, small animal, avians, exotics, wildlife, marine animals. I tried to cover every facet of veterinary medicine possible. So if you could do that, that would be amazing. They want to see that you're well-rounded. They want to see that you've considered everything and that you know that this is for you, that you've looked at your possible options, you've tried it out, and you're confident that this is something that you want to stick to, because vet school, of course, is expensive, it's hard, and you want to make sure that you're in it for the right reasons. But that goes to show you that grades are not everything. I got into vet school with a 3.2. I got 2 interviews with a 3.2. You can do anything, just work hard and be positive and be confident in yourself. So the next question is, what were my GRE scores? So I have to pull it up, so I'm looking down. But for my verbal reasoning score, I had a 154, which put me in the 64th percentile. For my quantitative reasoning score, which is math, it was the 149, which put me in the 34th percentile. And for my analytical writing score, it was a 4.0, which put me in the 57th percentile. So to know like what a good GRE score is, which I had no idea at the time, those numbers meant nothing to me. I didn't know if I failed or if I passed, but I only took the GRE once, and I just set the scores in and hoped and prayed that it went well. And I didn't even know what my scores were at the time that I applied to vet school. Like, I just now looked into it and kind of trying to understand like how I did on the GRE, which is a hot mess. Ideally, you would understand that beforehand and have hopefully taken it at least twice to maximize your chances of getting a great score. But I just didn't leave myself enough time to take the GRE before the scores were due. So to kind of like break it down for you, I looked it up. Top scores, so like to put you in the 10% of all test takers, you would want a 163 to 170 in your verbal, a 165 to 170 in quantitative, and a 5.0 to 6.0 in your writing. So I'm looking at like the Kaplan Review Prep, which is actually the course that I had taken when I studied for my SATs. So honestly, I probably should have taken it for my GREs, but I didn't do that. Anyway, and they kind of break down like score interpretation for you. So they ranked it between top score, competitive, good, and then below average. So I fell into the good scores category. My verbal and my writing scores put me above the 50th percentile. So I was doing above average, but it wasn't like extremely well that it was super competitive. I was just doing well enough to get by. And then for my quantitative reasoning, I actually fell below average on that. And once I didn't get into UF and I had spoken to their admissions, sorry, there's like fuzz. I had spoken to the admissions counselors and stuff about my application and what I could have done better the next time around to get in. And she did mention my quantitative reasoning score, like had I been able to bring that up, that would have been more competitive and stuff like that. So it's just nice to understand these scores and then hopefully, ideally, being able to retake the test and work on those areas that need more improvement. So for my next question was, what is the best way to prepare for your interview? So to prepare for your interviews, what I did and what I would recommend doing was looking into potential vet school interview questions. So I just Googled like common vet school interview questions, and I read through all of them. I read through as many as I could, and I tried to answer them all and form my own opinion on it before getting to my interview. So that just helps like organize your thoughts. A lot of these questions you might not actually have an opinion at that time on, so it's good to get that figured out beforehand, so when you sit down for your interview, you're not sitting there thinking, because that is what I hate, is that dead space or that dead silence when you're sitting there trying to think. And then for me, that just puts more pressure on me, and then I start panicking and I'm not actually thinking, I'm just sitting and spiraling downwards and it's just a mess. So in order to prevent that, I made sure to look into everything beforehand and try to, and of course, you're not gonna know every single question they're gonna ask you, but you know, the most common ones, like, why do you wanna be a veterinarian? You wanna have, you know, kind of unique and personal reasons behind that. Of course, as everyone says, you don't wanna just say, because I love animals, because everybody there is there because they love animals, but you kinda wanna explain, like, how you chose this path, how you got to this point, and what it means to you. So general questions like that. And I also, what I did was I looked into each school beforehand, and I really researched their veterinary programs just to make sure I knew exactly what I was getting into, what the schools had to offer, what a day in their school looks like. And that just gives you a general idea, just to know what you're getting yourself into if they ask you any questions about their programs, which they probably won't. But just in order to be familiarized, like, you'll be more comfortable knowing that you've looked into it and you know what they have to offer. You can ask them any questions they have. And that's another thing, is strongly recommends, I've been told this before, is any interview you have, whether it's a job interview, getting into school, it's always good to ask a question. So looking into the school beforehand was great because that just helped me have my own questions to present to them. But you just want to show that you've considered everything, you've looked into it, like, this is where you want to be. show them that you care. So questions are great, looking into potential questions, and then practicing speaking. So if you can have someone sitting there asking you the questions, switching up the orders, just practice speaking fluently, leaving out words like and, like, you know, practice being comfortable speaking in front of people you don't like. And there I go, using I'm really bad at that. But at FSU, at least, Florida State, where I went for undergrad, we had this career center, and it was an amazing resource, and I did not take advantage of it. I told myself I was going to, I wanted to, I planned to, and I never got around doing it. But they had a career center that you could go into, and you could practice interviews with people, and you would tell them like what you're preparing for, like I'm preparing for my vet school interview, whatever, and they would formulate their own questions, and then they would kind of score you on how you answered, and they would give you back your results, and then you would keep working with them to kind of grow as an interviewee and strengthen your interviewing skills. So if that's something that your school offers, I would recommend looking into that. That's an amazing resource. And if you don't have that, just have like your friends or family, or even someone that you're kind of not as comfortable with asking you questions, so you can practice being confident, being comfortable, projecting, maintaining eye contact, all that stuff. It's great to practice beforehand. The next question is, what do I wear to my interview? Which is a great question because I was very up in the air about that at the time of my interview. We're gonna start with the men because it's pretty simple for you. You're just gonna have to wear a pantsuit, a nice tie, some nice shoes, you know, it's not that difficult. Just look nice, clean, and put together. For the ladies though, I was told not to wear a skirt. I don't know how true that is, but definitely the safest option is a pantsuit. You wanna stick to like neutral colors, so black, navy. I had one interviewer recommend adding in like pops of color, so like you could wear a shirt like this under it, you could wear any just business casual, nice, plain. You just don't want to show too much of anything, you know. And so she also recommended putting in like if you wore like a pin or something that for an organization or something that identifies you, just things to show your personality. I had one girl who had her interview done explain that she wore like funny, like fancy socks, and they saw it, and they were talking for like the first 5 minutes of her interview just about socks and stuff like that. So it really calmed her down beforehand because they were just like, you know, being personable and fun and silly and stuff like that. So, but aside from that, you know, you can show your personality, but you just want to be professional. If you do decide to go with wearing a skirt or a dress, of course, make sure that it is business appropriate. You want it to be at least knee length or below the knee. If you're wearing a dress, make sure that it is not tight. The rules for tight dresses and skirts is it should not ride up when you walk. If it does, that means it is too tight. So, yeah, you just want to be, you know, you want to look professional. You want to look put together, and but don't be afraid to show your personality through it. As far as shoes, you can wear heels, you can wear flats. Keep in mind that your interview is not just an interview. Both schools, when I interviewed at, we did a tour of the entire vet school after, so you're going to be doing a lot of walking. You want to make sure you're comfortable, so if you're not comfortable in heels, don't wear heels, just wear flats. Of course, like closed-toed shoes, not sneakers. And if you decide to go with heels, keep them a professional height. I think 3 inches is the recommendation for that, but you know, you're not wearing stilettos or your pumps that you wear to the club. Just basic little, I don't even know what they're called, you know, Mary Janes, things like that. So my next question is, do I remember any challenging interview questions? Okay, so in my opinion, interview questions themselves are not extremely challenging. They're mostly asking you questions to reflect on yourself, your personal beliefs, your experiences. So they're just asking you to like delve deep into like things you've done, why you're here, if you've thought about vet school, if you've thought about what it entails, things like that. So it's not too difficult, but the really more challenging ones are the ethical questions, and every school is gonna ask you at least 1 ethical question. I was asked 2 in one of my interviews. And these are just more difficult simply for the fact that they're very thought-provoking and they're asking you about sensitive subjects. So they're just wanting to know that you've put thought into this stuff. It's stuff that you're going to be faced with on a day-to-day basis as a veterinarian. So they want to know that you've thought about it, that you've formed your own opinion on it, and that you stick to your beliefs. So I'll give you an example. Questions that they asked me were, one was knowing that overpopulation in shelters is a very big deal. Like, what is my opinion on the shelters that elect to euthanize animals once they reach maximum capacity? That was difficult for me because I did not have an opinion on that at the time. Like, I did not know what I believed. I could understand both sides to the argument, but it's important in these ethical questions that you choose one side and you stick to it. So, of course, everyone can always see the good and the bad to everything, but they're going to try to trick you a little bit, and they're going to be like, so for example, I told them that I wasn't for these kill shelters. And so then they'll, after you explain your reasonings, and they'll be like, but don't you understand, like, overpopulation? What are they supposed to do when they have all these animals coming in and nowhere to house them? How are they supposed to intake other animals? And then you're really thinking like, oh, that's a good point. Like, okay, so maybe I do believe in them. But they're doing that just to trip you up. They want you to stick to your beliefs. They want you to stay firm. Don't flip-flop between both sides. Just stick to it and write it out. Another question I had was, what is my opinion on, okay, so if a person came in with 2 healthy cats, they were 2 years old, no health concerns, but they're moving to a new apartment that doesn't allow pets, so they want to euthanize them, what would I do? So of course, everything is your opinion. So there's no wrong answers. You can say anything you want and you defend it however you want. Just stick to it. If you decided to euthanize the animals, that is fine. If that is what you believe, if you decide not to, that is fine as well. Just stick to your answer. I messed up on that question because I was all over the place and they kept like digging and asking me about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And they're like, okay, so I had originally said I would not euthanize them. They're healthy animals. And they're like, okay, so then what are you going to do? What if they just take him into another vet and get it to euthanize it? And then I was like, okay, well, then I would ask them if they could surrender the animal to me. And they're like, okay, so you're going to take in every animal that people ask to euthanize. That's going to be a lot of animals. And they really want to know that you've thought about this stuff. So they're going to dig, and just stick to your answer. Another difficult question, or some other examples of ethical questions, and you can just look these up online, would be, should exotic species be kept as pets? Of course, the euthanasia questions, your opinion on animal rights versus animal welfare. And those are kind of confusing topics, so I would recommend looking into that to know what both sides entail and what your belief is and what you stand by. And then another one, that I was asked was, what would I do if I caught a classmate cheating? So again, this goes into preparing for your interview. If you look up potential questions beforehand, you can form your opinion so you're not left scrambling at the time of the interview to think of an answer and think why you believe in that. Because these are deep questions, like they require a lot of thought. So for my final question is, if you don't get into vet school, do you end up having to wait another year to reapply, or do you have to choose an entire career path? So first of all, I'm going to say that we're not going to put that out there. You are going to get in on your first try. We're going to put that positivity into the atmosphere, okay? But worst case scenario, if that is not the case for you, you can apply as many times as you want. I had spoken to someone who had applied 6 times and finally gotten into their school. So if this is what you want to do, don't give up on it, and don't let anybody talk you out of it. You just keep trying, and in your time off, between application cycles, just work on strengthening your application, whether that's improving your grades or expanding on your experience or getting experience in different avenues of veterinary medicine, working at shelters versus clinics versus research, all that kind of stuff. Just strengthen yourself as an applicant and continue to apply. You know, there's no limit to applying. It all has to do with what you can afford and how badly you want this. But yes, the application cycle, how it would work if you did not get in, you would wait until the VEMCAS reopened, but it would save all your answers. So for the most part, you wouldn't have to go through and rewrite everything. You would just have to update your experiences, update the courses you've taken, your grades. It will ask you for new letters of recommendation though, so you're gonna have to do that as well. And I think you will also have to send in new supplemental applications, and of course you would just have to repay for that. You can keep your same GRE scores, or you can take it again if you choose to. That's up to you. But anyway, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that was helpful. Again, if you have any other questions, please comment down below, or you can reach out to me on my Instagram. I also have that in the link below. I always answer everyone's questions on there if that's somewhere you want to reach me. So I'll see you guys next time.